Okay, I have 3 p.m., so I'm going to get started. And there's actually a fair bit of interaction in this. I'm going to do a lot of polls. So hang on while we take a look at what's happening. This is a little bit about me. You're going to get a copy of this slide deck. So you get to have all these links to my to purchase my book if you like, or to look at a one-on-one coaching program, get to my LinkedIn profile, and get more information about this webinar and my blog. So I'm going to welcome Marie Helen Ryder. Thanks for being here, and Alexander and Cameron, the famous co-op student. So when I've been the phone lady for, whoops, new technology, it's gonna make me crazy. Let's see if I can get back. Okay. When I started the phone lady was 16 years ago. So that feels like a very long time. And in those early years, blogging came to the forefront. And because of my background as a journalist, because I had written weekly columns for magazines that I worked for, I had a deep curiosity about blogging. And I decided to take it on. And it was painful. Not because of the writing for me, but because of all the technology involved at that time and how long it took. It basically took most of every Sunday for years and years and years, until Linda Daly, my guest today, convinced me there was an easier way. So she is now really a big help in my creating that biweekly blog and getting it out to everybody. I didn't have any expectations, and I think that's always the best way to start a project, is not to have any expectations. But what happened as a result of that blog, starting in about the 3rd year of writing it, is that it started to bring me work every week. And this was kind of magic. It felt like magic.
After all those hours and hours and hours of work, right?
Exactly. Sometimes the work came from the person who received the blog, for sure, but often the work came from somebody who'd received it, but they shared it with someone else. Or I became top of mind, and the next conversation they had with somebody, they said, oh, well, I think you should probably call the phone lady. So my sales skill number 4 is the idea that part of your sales process has to be figuring out for yourself how you're going to stay top of mind, how you're going to stay in touch with people. And I want to share this quote with you about showing up, right? It's so powerful to continually show up in front of your target market. Now, you have to do it in a way that's going to work for you. To me, it's the same with selling. You have to sell in a way that's going to work for you. Otherwise, you won't do it. You'll procrastinate, you'll feel defeated. And it's the same with this idea of consistent follow-up, is that you really have to do it in a way that's going to work for you. So we're going to talk about 3 levels of following up, and Linda's going to chime in with her experiences. Linda Daly, so you know, and I've been remiss because I haven't introduced you properly. Linda Daly is the owner of Daily Progress. She is a newsletter maven, but she also builds websites for specific clients. And Linda, anything you want to add to that?
I do a bunch of connecting. So I help people with, aside from doing newsletters, I help them with list building and in improving and their strategy around showing up. So this quote really, you sent me this quote, I think 2 or 3 years ago, Mary Jane, and it's on the homepage of my website. So I see it all the time. I think it's so powerful and it's so important because this is really where, especially if you're selling a product that requires a conversation at some point, so you're not just sort of sending out an email and people are clicking and buying, you have to keep showing up and you have to keep reminding people that you exist, but you need to figure out what to show up with, right? That's what we're talking about today. So this really supports your sales efforts in just building on them, I think, from that perspective, right?
Yeah.
And
Well,
if
Linda,
you're always showing up and people, and you're showing up with nothing that's interesting, well, people won't be paying as much attention. So yeah.
yeah, and it builds your brand. One of the workshops I did earlier this week, I talked about the fact that your brand is not your logo. Your brand is the experience people have working with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's your brand.
Yeah.
And so showing up with valuable, something of value, only grows your brand, whether it's a personal brand, because you're in job search mode, or whether it's your brand for your business. You have to figure out how to keep showing up.
Yeah.
So,
And showing up consistently
yeah,
shows that you're consistent,
yes,
that you're in there for the long run kind of
that's
thing,
right.
right?
And
So
we all want to work with people who are consistent.
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So here's our agenda, which is I'm going to talk about simple ways to do this, simple and creative ways to do this, and then things that are even more creative, but a bit more work. So that you can decide where your showing up fits in. What both Linda and I want to say is try. Just pick something and get started and see how it works for you, see what the benefits are. Um, don't procrastinate too much on this.
Yeah.
So I have 3 polls I'm going to do. And I'm going to launch the poll. So the question is, if you do already read, watch, what do you already read, watch that's valuable to clients and prospects? So here's the poll. If everybody can take a second to answer that, what are some of the things that you are already reading that would have information that's valuable to clients or prospects?
Apparently, because I'm a panelist, I can't vote on this.
Oh, that's too bad.
That's all right. You'll hear my opinions. This is
Yeah.
great though.
Okay. So newsletters really seem to be winning here. That's fantastic. We've got 63% have voted. So I'm just going to wait another few seconds and see if anybody else wants to vote there.
Oh, what a
Okay.
great tool this is.
It is. So newsletters are really, that's fantastic, isn't it?
It is.
You're going to have to take a screenshot of this, Linda. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. 81% have voted. I'm going to share the results with you. So newsletters really won the day at 67% of you, and followed by social media posts, and then by press releases. And much to my surprise, blogs, expert columns, and newspapers are kind of lumped together there at 22%. So
Yeah.
that's
Interesting.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. So if you are already reading things that have content that your clients can benefit from, the simplest thing is to figure out a routine where you can send that out. I'm showing a screenshot here of LinkedIn. And the second one down is something called Daily Rundown. This is Daily Rundown Saturday, but it's a newsletter from LinkedIn, and it includes all kinds of bits that connect back with other publications or newsletters. So it could have an article from Forbes, it could have an article from the Wall Street Journal, it could have something from the Globe and Mail, and then it will usually also have a column from an expert of some sort. And often, well, I'll click on this early in the morning with my coffee, and if there's something there that applies to some of my clients, I will get it off to them.
And do you mean sharing it on LinkedIn or sending them a
I'll
link?
share it on LinkedIn, but I'll also take the link and send it to individual clients.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, because for different people, you may have to reach out in different ways too, which is all, an important
That's
thing.
right. I mean, social is definitely part of this, sharing on social. But the experience too of your brand to send something specific to a few clients that it's very specific to is also an amazing way to get them to remember you and call you with another job. So yeah, don't hesitate to do that. What are you reading regularly, Linda?
Several newsletters, more newsletters than anything. I don't get this daily rundown. I got to look into that. Typically when I log into LinkedIn, I'm sort of doing the scroll, to see
Right.
who I know, what they're posting, is there anything of interest, and sometimes liking, commenting, or sharing, as appropriate. Um, but doing that on a regular basis, and that sharing piece that you were talking about in the content marketing world, that's basically curating. When you hear people talking about curating
Okay.
content, that's curating content. You're finding valuable information. That's well, you create a lot of your own content, Mary Jane, but this is information that other people are creating that you're sharing with
Yeah.
your contacts as appropriate, right? So
And the other thing I
yeah.
do here, which you can see some of here, Kimberly Field, and here, Blair Hislop, I do pay attention at least once a day to anniversaries and promotions on LinkedIn. Now, this is because I'm a B2B seller. I don't do very much B2C. So I'm showing you LinkedIn, but I'm sure there are similar ways to communicate on Facebook or Instagram or those other platforms. They don't tend to be my target audience, so I'm not there as much for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, each of them has their own routine, in fact, right? So, and
yeah,
it's hard to be everywhere. I've sort of drawn back a little bit on that myself in the last few months because it's hard to do a good job of it and be everywhere.
that's right.
Yeah.
Now, that's very cut and paste-ish, but it's good, it's valid. Another newsletter I get is Entrevestor, which sort of covers the startup community in Atlantic, Canada. So I'll share that if there's something interesting in it.
Yeah. There's one I get called Marketing Brew that Natasha actually turned me on to, that's
Yeah.
got little tidbits of stats and information, every day. And again, some of it's useful, some of it not so much for me right now, kind of thing. But
Yeah.
there's enough variation in it that I find something, of interest.
Yeah, and if there's a newsletter that you really love that you want to share with everybody here, please don't hesitate to put it into.
Oh, well, probably yours.
Well, and I'm saying that to everybody. If there's
Oh,
anything anybody
yes.
wants to share, yeah. And
Yeah.
thank you for saying mine, Linda. So this is an idea for simple and creative. So I'm about to launch a poll with a yes or no question. I want to know how many of you already read, collect, and share quotes. So we're just 57, 61%, 66%. We're getting there.
I'm curious on this one myself, I must say.
I am too. Just going to give it a few more seconds. We're at 80% voted there. And wow. Okay, so this surprises me. I'm going to stop the poll. Thanks, everybody. And I'm going to share the results. It's 50-50.
Wow, look at that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So that's something then to consider is your audience. So earlier just after the pandemic started, I was part of an online community called My Revenue Room. And as part of keeping the community engaged, I did send out weekly quotes.
Yeah.
And the feedback was pretty phenomenal on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're collecting quotes anyway, or enjoying them anyway, this might be something that's easy for you to do. Um,
And you can repurpose them,
yes,
so you can save them. First of all, Mary Jane, we must have, uh, 100 quotes made up for you.
and they do get re.
And no one's going to remember all of them. And some of them are really good and worth repeating, right?
Yep.
So
So
I
here's
really
one, for
like this one.
example.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
And the reason I've stuck it here is, there's so many platforms where you can grab a quote and then create your own graphics. I tend to use something called Get Stencil. So this is what I end up with by using Get Stencil. It's pretty easy for me. I can find the photo that matches the quote in my mind. And then just change the color of the quote if it's black or white ink, etc. And I can do that pretty quickly if it's something that I want to do. So I think, Linda, you're using something other than that. You're using Canva or...
I use Spark right now. Spark is my main one. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
but I can get, so for me, when I'm doing this stuff, it's never about, well, it probably should be, but it's not usually about doing it fast. I'm usually doing it late at night and having fun.
Yes, well, that's the creative part. So it is fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's something that, when I first started using Stencil, I could lose a couple hours really, really quick.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth, thank you. My new favorite quote: "Your brand is the experience of the people you have working for you." That's great.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, that is lovely.
I gotta capture that one.
So yeah, you can find something that's easy or simple, but that also gives you, some creative fun. I think Linda's word is right on the mark there. And then there's creative in a bit more work. So my last poll is coming at you now. Oh, Desiree, good question. So it depends. She's asking about the source of my quotes, and I will just get into Google and say inspirational quotes for small business owners. And I can easily end up with a quote of 25 or 26. A lot of the ones you're looking at today came from some research both Linda and I did on communication quotes.
Yeah, conversation and
Conversation.
That kind of thing.
We were going down that alley. But, years ago, I had the big Bartlett's quotes on my desk. It was like the size of an encyclopedia. But now it's so simple to do it online.
Yeah, copy and paste, right? So
yes. So this poll has two questions. So the first is yes or no. How many of you regularly read or at least one blog or newsletter from a favorite company or individual? So some of you have already answered that. And then question, how many do you read regularly? And I see I have a spelling error in regularly, but don't hate me for it. I forgot an R.
Oh, I didn't catch that when I was checking either. Look at that. And regularly is an interesting word anyway. What's regularly? Daily, monthly, weekly?
Yes,
Hmm.
there you go.
Um,
That's true.
yeah,
Good comment there.
yeah. Because, well, and it depends on your target market, how often you need to be showing up too, right? So,
Oh, I'm loving these results. That's great. We're at 66% voted, so I'm going to wait just a couple of more seconds, and then I'll share the results with you. And I really appreciate the participation. Um, okay, here I'm going to share the results. So 80% of you regularly read at least one blog or newsletter, and 88% of you read 1 to 5.
wow. Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's fantastic. That's great. So
yeah.
when you see those results, first of all, that's good news for Linda. But second of all, I hope it helps you realize that there's a real audience out there um, for newsletters and blogs. And as we saw in the first question, newsletters seem to be more popular than blogs. So that's a
Well, yeah,
piece of information, at least for this sample group.
yeah. Well, a newsletter can have, a newsletter can have content. It might be the way to get people to your blog as well, though, right?
That's true.
Like in
Which
your
is what
case,
I
it's
do.
really about, driving people to read your blog.
Yeah,
One of the ways you're driving people to read your blog, not all of them, of
yeah.
course, right? But so really email is kind of just the one mode of communicating among various, right? So, um, and if you're blogging regularly, you want to let people know that you have, like, when you have new blog posts, however you might do that, by email, on social media, in a email signature. There's a variety of ways of doing that, so that's great. I love
So
those
Maria
stats.
Lynn is sharing that every time the people she follows, every time they post, she reads it, which is
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
And I believe it's Daleen that's sharing that what comes into her inbox or what she sees online is what she reads. So
yeah,
if it's coming directly to people, that's the other part of it,
yeah,
which is about lists. And Linda and I did a previous webinar on lists, and we're thinking we will do another one.
yeah,
Um, and then Joni's sharing communication is key and newsletters reach people when they have time to catch up. Well, that's true too.
yeah,
That's true too. I do save them.
yeah. And there's value in just being seen in the inbox. I always tell people that, even if someone's having a busy week and they're deleting, and maybe not opening it, they've seen your name. And as long as they haven't opened and unsubscribed, they're going to keep seeing your name in
Yeah,
their
so
inbox, right?
I think I missed a slide here and I don't know how I did that, but
Oh,
I
maybe my
wanted to
fault.
give you some thoughts on how to do it. So um, it doesn't have to be complex.
No.
It can be simply um, something you are already learning, and you're going to write a few paragraphs about how you've chosen to learn that,
Yeah.
or something you are curious about,
Yeah. Yeah.
or
Curiosity is a big one, right? And
it's huge.
yeah. And I do that a lot when I'm researching and learning. And, you could talk about the stuff you're researching or learning, or you could talk about the way you went about it, which could also be useful to people, right? And I know Mary
And you
Jane,
had a good story with Allison, how you got her to do a
well, I
monthly.
don't know that it was I that got her to do it. It was one of those inspiring conversations. And, I had been sort of trying to prompt her for a year or so to start a newsletter of some kind. And she was resisting because she didn't really want to be having to commit to the blogging every so often. And, I said, well, it doesn't have to be a blog. Like, what are you doing all the time anyway, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So she was always looking at stats and, those kinds of things, statistics about website use and, you know, interesting tidbits. And so just share that. So she's been doing that now for a while. And in fact, since she started that, her newsletter has evolved. So, just because you start with one thing, and my own newsletter has evolved, your newsletter has evolved, Mary Jane, over years, right? So
Frida's asking, is there a best length to a newsletter? And I don't think there is. I think
there's one newsletter I get every month that probably takes me 20 minutes or half an hour to read. It's long. But I read it because I find it valuable, right? Now there are lots that I get that are long that I probably wouldn't take the time to read. So
yeah,
that's
and I think a newsletter can be, very, very short.
Think of it as an excuse to show up.
Yeah.
Whatever it is has to be to show up, right?
Yeah. I think that if your business is doing something that there's an activity involved, you can talk about that one activity. In other words, if my business was baking, which would be so fun, I could talk about tricks I've learned recently, particularly over COVID. I could just give one trick for how to have fresh raisin cinnamon bread ready by 7 in the morning.
Yeah,
I could do that.
Yeah.
And Maria Len is asking about how to make the newsletter for my business other than news about my VR shop and game reviews. Well, a couple of things, I think. So VR itself is changing all the time. So you could include articles, links to other articles about VR, or just talk about your own relationship with VR and where you hope it's going, or what you see coming down the pipe. Or you can talk about your customers' experience with a particular game that week.
Yeah.
One of the things that I do is I'm always looking for the next idea. And when I say that, like it's a little different during COVID, but I'm looking in coffee shops or listening in coffee shops for an idea that I can write about that's either about talking on the phone or customer service or sales.
Or it might be a comment on social, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be long. It can be 1 or 2 paragraphs, and don't worry about your writing style.
Yeah.
Because you can do point form too.
Oh, look at that. VR vacations. I like that idea.
Wow, that's a great idea. I didn't even know there was such a thing.
So your newsletter doesn't even have to be, or your email. I mean, we can call it a newsletter. We can call it, I don't know, advertising. There's a bunch, some people might call it spam. So, but it doesn't actually have to even be about you and what you do. It's about showing up regularly. So I do a weekly event list here in Halifax for small business owners. And that newsletter has nothing to do with my business, other than I guess it's an example of my work, I suppose. But it's more about giving value to my target market. So if you're giving value to your target market, you're going to be remembered for that.
That's a great suggestion.
Yeah. And talk about apples instead of the whole apple tree. Get specific.
There you go. Yeah, it doesn't have to be about you. And that's actually all that encompasses everything I teach, and everything that Linda does. Is it isn't about us, it's about the person we're writing for. So what other things would be of interest to them?
Right? Yeah.
So we got about a minute left, and I want to remind everybody, questions, comments in chat. I'm keeping an eye out there. You'll get the digital version of today's slide deck, early bird notice of other webinars, other things going on, the bi-weekly tips and stories. So the newsletter is coming your way if you're not already getting it. And we are continually working to get all of these webinars up on YouTube. And we encourage you to subscribe if you're comfortable with doing that. And the reason is that as soon as we have 100 subscribers, we can actually call the channel Inspire Conversation. Currently, you can find it by entering Inspire Conversation, but I'd love to be able to call the channel.
It'd be so much better than all these numbers and letters here, right?
Yes, definitely. And I want to take this opportunity to let you know of something new that I'm doing as a result of all the work that I've done during COVID. My one-on-one client work increased substantially during COVID. And I've been so pleased that some of my clients have seen 10 times increase in revenue. It's so exciting to have that happen. So I want to make that available to more people. And I'm going to be doing that through limited size classes. They're going to be live online classes. So 6 of them for 6 people at a time. And you're going to receive an email with a link to a form to fill out. If this is something that's of interest to you, you want to make sure you're at the top of the list to join me for this. Please fill out that form and let me know. I'm so excited about doing it, because one of the things about one-on-one, it's great. Obviously, the results have been great, but we also learn from other people, just like we have here today.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Question from Marie Ellen. What are your favorite newsletter distribution programs? Linda, that's for you.
Oh, well, for me, ActiveCampaign. All the way. I've used lots of the different programs over the years, and I'm actually a channel partner with ActiveCampaign. So I guess I'm bought into it big time. I've used MailChimp. MailChimp is a good, if you're starting out and you're looking for a free application. It's great to start out, but you're going to want to progress to something that's got more bells and whistles eventually, probably.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah.
So I've been using ActiveCampaign for over a year now.
Probably getting close to a couple of years, Mary Jane, I think.
There you go. I'm not getting any older though. And yeah, it's really lovely. I was in there today just checking up on some things. So the information's really easy to use. And yeah, it's a very powerful format to be used.
Yeah, it's got a ton of automations and integrations that you can take advantage of too when you're really ready to like up your game. I use a lot of that extra stuff with clients and not so much myself. My business isn't that complicated, but some people certainly have complex business.
Okay, so she's adding that she has about 2,000 people on her email list and uses MailChimp, but I don't utilize it. Well, I think everybody's there. I have been going through.
That's a great number of people.
It is a great number of people. So having a conversation with Linda about how you might tap into those 2,000 people more regularly, I think is worth it. And again, it can be simple. Simple. Start simple is what I say to everybody.
Absolutely.
Because then you get to see the results, and the results are worth, I cannot even guess how much revenue my regular contact with people has generated.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it's over $100,000. I'm sure.
For me, it's all. My whole business comes from referrals and keep continually reminding people I'm out there.
Welcome, Jason. Glad to have you here. Yeah. Okay. We're going to hang out here for a few more minutes if there's questions or comments, but it is 3:34, so we're definitely, that's the